When you look at a map of North America, your eyes are usually drawn to the giants. The Great Lakes shout, "I'm here!" The Great Plains give a sense of infinity, and the Rocky Mountains pose like the map's muscular big brother. But as you zoom in on the southwestern corner of the map, you notice something strange, as if the cartographer spilled coffee and tried to cover it up. A thin, long, and jagged strip of land detached from the Mexican mainland and extending into the Pacific Ocean. This is the Gulf of California. At first glance, you might dismiss it as just a geographical oddity. But don't be fooled. Beneath this innocent-looking blue area, something is happening that seems like the Earth's crust is secretly filming a reality show. Faults are cracking, plates are pushing against each other, and nature is silently simmering, as if saying, "I'm not giving away any spoilers." But there's something big going on. In short, one of North America's most intense, least appreciated, but most dramatic scenes is unfolding right here under our noses. And as you're about to see, what's happening behind the scenes has shaped not just the maps, but the entire continent. Physically, the Gulf of California, also known as the Sea of Cortez, is a vast body of water. It stretches for over 700 miles from the mouth of the Colorado River in the north to where it joins the Pacific Ocean in the south. In terms of scale, this is roughly the distance from New York City to Atlanta, Georgia. Its width varies between approximately 30 and 150 miles, and it is bordered by the Mexican states of Sonora and Sinaloa to the east and the Baja California Peninsula to the west. However, while its surface features are remarkable, a deeper question arises. What caused this body of water to form? This is where the geology comes into play. The Gulf lies along the watershed between the Pacific Plate and the North American Plate. Millions of years ago, the Baja Peninsula was firmly attached to the Mexican mainland. However, tectonic movements began to separate the land, dragging Baja northwestward and creating a massive rift valley through which seawater flows. But here's the important point. This separation isn't complete. The Gulf of California is essentially an uplifted ocean. As the San Andreas Fault continues to pull the Baja Peninsula toward Alaska, the Gulf is gradually expanding. In a few million years, the Gulf may not remain just a sea. It could split California in two and turn places like Los Angeles into island properties. But the Gulf doesn't need to wait ages to cause problems. It's already causing many. Due to its tectonic origins, the Gulf reaches impressive depths, exceeding 3,000 meters in some basins. It also experiences some of the planet's most dramatic tides. In its northern sections, the water can rise or fall by up to 30 feet from low to high tide. These extreme tidal changes lift nutrients from the depths, feeding one of the world's most productive marine habitats. The famous ocean explorer Jacques Cousteau once called it the aquarium of the world, as it is home to approximately 900 species of fish and about 1/3 of the global marine mammal species. Yet, beneath those striking blue waters, a far harsher and less appealing reality lurks at the northern end of the Gulf. This leads to the region's most contested geographical issue: the Colorado River Delta. Landscape-wise, it should have been a vast, thriving estuary where the mighty Colorado River, after shaping the Grand Canyon, completed its course by mixing fresh water with ocean salt. In the past, it was precisely that. A lush, wetland labyrinth spanning over 2 million acres, teeming with jaguars, deer, and countless migratory birds. Today, satellite images of the upper reaches of the Gulf show no river at all, just a dried-up, fragmented salt plain. The Colorado River essentially disappears before reaching the sea. Human interventions in the upstream basin have fundamentally disrupted the Gulf's natural order. Massive dams like Hoover and Glen Canyon in the U.S., along with water diversions for agriculture in the Imperial Valley and urban centers like Phoenix and Las Vegas, have clogged the river. This has transformed the northern end of the Gulf into an ecological crisis zone. Without freshwater inflow, salinity in the upper reaches of the Gulf increased, harming native species such as the vaquita dolphin, one of the world's rarest marine mammals. This species is now endangered, with perhaps only a dozen remaining. However, there's a strange twist. The water sometimes returns. In 2014, an international initiative called Impact Flow deliberately released water held in dams from the U.S. into the ocean. For a brief and temporary period, the landscape reverted to its original state. Children in San Luis Rio, Colorado played in the water in places typically dominated by sand. The green delta briefly revived, demonstrating that the ecosystem wasn't destroyed forever, only restricted. And who controls this restriction? Typically, the United States. But that balance is shifting. While the U.S. manages the freshwater inflow, Mexico controls the saltwater side. And Mexico is beginning to understand that the Gulf of California isn't just a vacation spot for American tourists heading to Cabo. It's a crucial resource that could challenge the commercial dominance of the USS West Coast. Many assume that, due to its size, the Gulf should be considered international waters. But it is not. It is regulated by a strict and assertive framework of maritime regulations that Mexico uses to transform this vast area into a protected fortress. To understand how this is the case, and why the U.S. allows it, we need to go back to the origin of the name of this unusual peninsula and the long-standing confusion that convinced cartographers that California was entirely separate from North America. For nearly 2 centuries, purchasing a map in Europe would often depict California not as connected to the North American mainland, but as an enormous island drifting off the coast. This ranks among the most notorious and enduring mapping blunders in history. The cause of this error, along with the origin of California's name, doesn't stem from voyages or scientific study. Instead, it traces back to a romantic tale. In the early 1500s, Spanish writer García Rodríguez de Montalvo penned a fantasy story titled Las Sergas de Esplandian. Within it, he portrayed a legendary spot named California, an island abundant in gold and gems, populated by Amazon-like women under the command of Queen Calafia. When Spanish conquerors, guided by Hernán Cortés, reached the Baja Peninsula in the 1532, they encountered no warrior queens, but they did discover pearls. Convinced they'd found Montalvo's fabled realm, they assigned the name California to the landmass. Since they hadn't ventured far enough north to the river delta, they presumed the waters extended further, fully detaching Baja from the continent. Cortés labeled the surrounding sea the Sea of Cortés, a term that persists even now, although Mexico's government formally favors Gulf of California. Yet, the misunderstanding of the terrain led to tangible effects. In 1539, explorer Francisco de Ulloa navigated to the Gulf's northern limit, confirming Baja as a peninsula. He observed the delta and the continental link, definitively showing California was joined to North America. Charts were updated, and for several decades, the facts were accepted. Then, an odd reversal occurred. In the early 1600s, Spanish voyagers along the Pacific shore reported discovering the Strait of Anian, the fabled Northwest Passage. Via distorted reports and faulty information, the notion of California as an island re-emerged. It showed up on a 1622 map, and abruptly, the misconception spread widely. For the following 100 years, despite proof otherwise, California appeared as an island. Spain's King Ferdinand VI issued a royal edict in 1747, more than 2 centuries post-discovery, declaring officially that California is not an island. As Europeans debated over charts, the Gulf's real narrative was shaped by its local inhabitants. For millennia, the Gulf served as a vital resource for indigenous groups in the area. The Cocopah at the Delta, the Seri on the Sonoran shore, and the Quiliwa in Baja. The Seri in particular share a captivating bond with the Gulf. Residing in one of Earth's most severe deserts, the Sonoran Desert, they relied wholly on the sea for sustenance. They excelled in the Gulf's ways, steering through its dangerous flows in reed vessels, pursuing sea turtles, and enduring on Tiburon Island, the Gulf's biggest island. Tiburon Island today evokes a prehistoric era. It's rough, arid, and staunchly safeguarded. It continues to be administered by the Seri people, functioning essentially as a partly independent area inside Mexico. This stands as evidence that, while European authorities sketched fictional islands on paper, vibrant societies were commanding the actual layout of the Gulf. Yet, as the Spanish strengthened their grip on New Spain, the Gulf turned into a pathway for religious envoys. Jesuit clergy set up a series of missions along Baja's tough coastline. These weren't merely places of worship. They served as operational centers aimed at claiming the land for Spain against incursions from Britain and Russia. The challenges of crossing the Gulf, infamous for its abrupt, fierce tempests known as chubascos, ensured Baja stayed cut off. It became the overlooked landmass. Even following the Mexican-American War in 1848, when the United States absorbed Alta California, today's California, Nevada, Arizona, and beyond, they bypassed Baja. Why? The diplomats examined the charts and viewed a barren landmass lacking water and featuring rough peaks. The United States deemed it valueless. That proved a huge oversight. By setting a boundary in a direct path from the Colorado River, the United States unwittingly granted Mexico one of the strongest strategic edges in the 21st century. They handed Mexico full authority over the Colorado River's outlet and, importantly, the whole Gulf of California. Had the U.S. claimed Baja, the Gulf would qualify as shared international waters between the nations. Instead, Mexico controls both sides. And since they hold both sides, they've executed a regulatory strategy that basically secures the full sea as their exclusive domain. The border drawn in 1848, leaving Baja California in Mexico's hands, constitutes Mexico's greatest geographical advantage today. The U.S. failure to annex the peninsula created a geographical anomaly, allowing a single country to completely encircle a sea the size of the Adriatic Sea. Mexico didn't miss this opportunity, as if saying, "Thanks, but we'll pass." That's why the Gulf of California is far more important than you might think. The first reason? A legal maneuver called internal waters status. According to international maritime law, a country controls the area 12 nautical miles from its coast as sovereign territory. After that comes an exclusive economic zone of up to 200 miles. But the middle of a large body of water is usually open sea, international waters where everyone can pass, fish, and relax freely. Mexico looked at the Gulf of California, which is over 24 miles wide in many places, and realized that according to standard rules, the middle strip would be international waters. No thanks, they said. Because the peninsula to the west, the mainland to the east, and the islands protecting the mouth of the bay to the south are entirely under their control. Thus, they have classified the entire bay as internal waters. That's a huge difference. The Gulf of California is now no different from a lake in Chihuahua or the Rio Grande River, entirely under Mexican sovereignty. There is no right of innocent passage here. Foreign warships cannot enter without permission. It's like a private sea fortress protected by geography, isn't it? A bit of a James Bond movie vibe. So why does Mexico need a private sea? To create an economic engine that will completely bypass the U.S. For years, Southern California has been the gateway for Asian goods entering North America. The ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach handle the majority of U.S. imports, the bottleneck of the American economy. As we saw during the pandemic, when it gets congested, everything stops. Mexico sees this weakness as an opportunity and is developing a system known as the California Bypass. By expanding ports within the Gulf, like Guaymas in Sonora, and connecting them to Arizona and Texas with modern railroads, they are opening a back door to the American interior. Asian cargo ships can bypass California and anchor in the safe inland waters of Mexico, and containers can travel to Chicago faster and perhaps cheaper by train instead of queuing on the LA coast. The Gulf's geography makes it an ideal alternative logistics hub for North America, almost like a geographic joke. But it's not just about moving other people's goods. The Gulf is poised to become the center of the future energy economy. If you drive along the Sonora coast on the east side, you're passing over what investors call white gold, Mexico's Lithium Valley. As the world shifts to electric vehicles and everything else, lithium has become one of the most strategic resources. Sonora possesses massive lithium clay deposits. While clay extraction is technically more difficult compared to saltwater pumping in South America, the size of the reserves is staggering. The Mexican government launched the Sonora Plan, nationalizing lithium reserves and aiming to transform the Gulf region into a green energy hub. Massive solar farms and battery manufacturing facilities. The Gulf provides cooling water for the power plants and sea connections to transport batteries to the world. All in all, the Gulf of California becomes one of North America's most strategic geographical features, though we may not realize it today. So when you look at the Gulf of California, don't just see a beautiful place to sip margaritas and whale watch, see the degraded ecosystem in the Delta, struggling against American thirst. See a historical map error, creating a unique geopolitical reality, and of course, see an economic giant poised to awaken. If you enjoyed learning about the Gulf of California, check out the video about the forgotten Pacific Island territories of the USA. Thanks for watching, see you next time. Goodbye.